I'm going to be working on today is actually showing you some of the projects I've done, how I actually code some, some components, some part of the projects. You get so let's change this website from this dark mode and let's put it in the light mode, right? So now let's switch to the portfolio section. I mean, in the dark mode, in the light mode, I feel you can view everything clearly like this, unlike if it's in the dark mode. But I mean, some people have how they view their, how they like viewing. But for now, let's switch it to the light mode. So now let's view the project here actually. That particular project, the first project there, and there's some descriptions here, but we'll move past that now. And okay, it's being built with Next.js, React.js, TypeScript, Tailwind, Node.js, Express, MongoDB, and Mongoose, right? These are actually the features, and this was the challenge, and this was our solution at the end of the project. Look at so now let's view the project live here. Okay. Um, okay, this is actually the project, and what this is the home page, right? This is the home page, and what we are going to be working on is we want to start from this home page. So let's get to the code. Okay. Okay, this is the home page. Once you come here, here is the home page. This is the code that actually formed that home page. But if you check the home page here, you can see there are some components which were imported before the home page can actually work. That there are some part of the home page which are being coded outside this page and are being used inside this page. You get so now let's get to look for those one like the recipe card, the home categories. Let's try to look for the home category first. Here. Okay, and this one as well, you see that there are some components which are being used, which is like something like the recipe card. You get so if you come to the recipe card, there are some components. I want us to start from the scratch. Recipe actions. Let's come to recipe actions and comment thread, reply form. Sorry, reply form. Okay, from here now, I think this is from scratch. We are going to move from here to the comment thread, to the receive actions, to the other ones, and so on and so forth. But firstly, you see where the it starts from, the one that there was nothing coded outside that was imported. It all starts from reply form. Then the reply form was used in the comment thread, and the comment thread in the receive action, the receive action in the receive card, the receive card in the home categories, and the home category finally in the home page. You see, there are a lot of features in the home page which are being coded outside, but it all started from here. So let's start coding from this first one actually. And okay, I'm going to be showing you how we code this, but let's check this part of the component in the home page actually. I'll minimize this, and yep, at the home page, okay, sorry, let's see the comments again. So here is the comment, right? And here is the reply section. That was a reply form. So this form here that you are going to enter your name, you're going to write a comment and then click on comment, and the comment shows automatically. I'm not logging as a user now. And if you are not logging as a user, you can actually comment, you can actually reply, but you cannot view the previous comment. That's just it. So firstly, I'll try to like create this. This is actually an application which is being created to share recipe. Like you can see this particular recipe here now. If you click on it, you see the person actually shows the guide on how to create this and all, and you can like, comment, share, and download the recipe if you want. Also, you see here you can like, comment, share, and download the recipes if needed, and that's all. You get so firstly, like I said, we are going to be working on hold on. However, we're going to be working on the comment, right? Okay. We are going to be working on the comment section here, which is, sorry, this section, and on the reply side. We're going to be working on this reply actually. So let's bring out the code editor. Here we are going to be writing the code, like we're going to code this part of this component, this reply part of the component, this reply form. We're going to be coding it here. How do we actually come up with this? were we able to like structure something like this right here? So firstly, in React, because I actually build this with React Next.js. So in React, there are two type of component. There is what we call server component and client component, right? Mostly, if you are building, it's okay. If you are building anything, if you just open a file with React, it actually identify that file as a server component until you tell React that this is actually a client component. What is client component? What is server component? Client component is like the UI, your space, what is showing you here, like the one you are viewing. The server component is the one that is working on the on the server, not the browser. But here is the browser now. The ones that are working here are what we call client component. Like you are seeing this form now, you have to click it, you have to do something here. Those interactivities has shown that this particular file is what a client component file because of those interactivity. You the user have to do something. So the one you the user deals with, the one you do, you click a button, you do something like you need to like interact with is called what is being built with a client component, not a server component. Like this one, I want to create what I want to code this reply form I did here. I want to recode it here. So you know that it's going to be a client component because there are actually some interactivity here. You have to click the reply, put your name, put your this, then comment, and it has to comment, all those things you get. So first of all, when you are starting with a client, I told you at default, if you open a file, it understands it as what server component. So you have to tell it that use client. That means it should use what client side for this particular for running this particular code. So it can actually accept that interactivity. So the next thing now is in React, with TypeScript, before you start working on TypeScript, it's just like it's being able to like guide you. Okay, I want to tell TypeScript what and what I want to use in this code. Do you get, so that when I'm going off it, when I'm using it differently, it can tell me that okay, it can throw an error to tell me that I'm actually using this differently or I'm not using it right. Do you get, or I'm not using what I want to use, I'm using a different thing which I didn't plan to use. Do you understand? So first of all, you are going to write an interface here where you define everything you want to actually use in this project. First of all, I'll be like interface, like I said, and we'll name it props, which is the short for what property. The properties you are going to be using to like code this particular page. And firstly, before you code this reply, there must be a recipe before you reply to the recipe, right? So there must be a recipe created somewhere. And that recipe that was created somewhere, there must be maybe on a database, right? And that database, there must be an ID which is used to identify that particular recipe in the database. Like you in at work now, every worker or every employee has an ID which is being used to recognize you in the workspace, right? So first of all, you need the recipe ID so you can know which particular recipe you are replying to. That's the first thing you will need. So let's write it out. Recipe ID. And we are going to be entering it, in um even in JavaScript or in TypeScript or in React, you need to like specify what type of data are you passing. This recipe ID now, what do you want to pass it as? Are you passing it as string? Are you passing it as an integer, or are you passing it as a boolean? Boolean is just like maybe true or false, something, a conditional statement. While string is like you can use a combination of letters and numbers and all you get, but integer is just numbers. So you have to tell it so that now if I said recipe ID is supposed to be only numbers, if I write int here now, it's going to be like it's going to be only numbers. So later, with if I'm coding this particular stuff with a different thing, if I just say it's going to be number now, sorry, TypeScript does not understand int, so use number instead. Yeah. So if I said I'm going to code this with only number now, if later I'm changing it from number to maybe a letter, it will now throw up an error to tell me that this is not what we discussed, right? So now I will have to put this one as what string. So this one now means is a combination of letter and number. So when I'm coding and I'm using a combination of letter and number, it understand that okay, that's what you actually plan to do from the beginning. So the next thing now is okay, now if I am replying a comment now, that means I am either a user, or if the application actually allow a non-user to reply a comment. And yes, when I build my application, I allow the non-user to actually comment and reply to comment, even if you are not logged in. But with the aspect of you going to like enter your name, even you can even leave the name and it will just, you can comment anonymously. I actually did it there. When you don't need to know the user will just want to comment anonymously. So the next thing now is what we call the authorization. I mean, the user authorization for it to know the particular user which is commenting, which in my code I defined it as what token. I use token, the word token. So this token now is going to be a string, right? But I also have to leave it null because it's not everybody that is registered that can comment. I actually said any, even anonymously, you can comment in any recipe, you can reply to a recipe you get. So you mustn't be a registered person before you can comment also. So that's it here. And the next thing here now is, okay, before I reply now, there must be a comment before I reply, right? So let there be a comment ID. And this particular reply form, I think I built it not only for reply, it's a form which I build for both comment and reply. You know, if I want to have a fresh comment, I will still have the same form. If I want to reply, I'll still have the same form. So I'm actually building this particular component now to be used for both replies and both comment forms. You understand? So in the form now, I will want it to, if there is already a comment, for it to recognize the comment ID, right, as what? String. But like I said, it's optional. So with optional, I have to put this question mark to tell it that, okay, oh, the user can actually do without comment ID and the user can actually do with comment ID. So it's an optional string, right? So I think that's the three things I'm going to use for this form. So the next thing now is in React, before you code anything, you have to like, you know, when you write any function, you have to export it so that you can actually import a component in the props of the component in another code. Do you get? So people do it in two ways. Either you write your function before exporting it, but I do it the easier way, which you, as you are writing, you are exporting. So which is going to be like export default, sorry, default function. What am I going to name this particular function? I'm going, let me just name it what? Reply form. You understand me? Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Okay, I'm going to name it reply form, and that's it. So I'll be returning something at the end of the day. I mean, once I have finished coding my logic and everything I want it to do, I have to return the design of this form, or how I want this form, or what I actually want it to display, or what I actually want it to do. I have to return it at the end of the day. For now, let me just make it empty and I'll come back to it later. First of all, we need to structure what we are doing here. So now we have to initialize the variable. Variable are like maybe the items, the stuff. We have to make any word or anything we are going to be using in the code. We have to actually make the system, the React to understand that what this is what I actually want to use in the code. I mean, now that we are coding this thing here, the TypeScript or the JavaScript or the React is not actually knowing. If I said you here now, I want to use you to like code something, it does not know what you is, except I tell it that anytime I mention you means this, you means that. Do you get? So I have to tell it by initializing the variable from the beginning. You know, in a normal JavaScript, I'll just be like, let you be equal to maybe an empty space, or like, let's make it a reality. This, there's going to be a name here now, just be like, let name be equal to maybe empty, right? But in React, you don't do that. You use what we call use state. Use state is like a memory where you store variables, you get, and there's a function there which you use to control the variables as well. So it's being written like this. You just write it with a constant. const I mean, I'm writing it with the constant because I don't need to change the variable later. I mean, if you are changing the variable later, you don't need to use constant, you can use late. But now I don't want to change the variable later because I don't need to change it. the user is the one entering it. So I'm not even using a variable here. I'm just making it something that the user is going to enter later. So what you enter, there is no any way somebody can actually change it later. You understand? So I'll use constant here. And the next thing, it will be equals to what? The use state. You can see now when I write the use state function, what happened here is that this was not here before. It import use state from React for me. It's because I've installed an extension called ES7. If you didn't install that extension, you need to import this particular use state from React. But now I've installed it, so I'm going to be, I think I need, how many variables do I need here? One, I'll need it to know this box. I'm going to be entering the name, the one I'm going to be doing the text, and the one I'm going to be using to control this comment button. It's actually a button here. Even forget it's showing a name here. Only I actually make the background to, like, be the same with this. So I'm going to be needing like 3 variables to be declared. So I'm going to be declaring 3 variables. The first one, I'm going to be declaring the name, right? And I told you here in with use state, you are going to be doing you are going, once you declare the variable, you are going to give it a function too. Is that function you are going to use to like control it later. And if you want to call on the variable, you can use this. And if you want to use, maybe use the variable to like as a function, you can use the function you define here. You get? So you understand when we go more on the code later. Now we are to set the name. You are going to write it like this and check well for the cases. The name was small here, which there is no need. You can make it capital or small, anyhow you want to write your name. But here you have to write it this way. You get me? So I'm going to leave the entry empty because later I will want the user to enter it. You get? So I will structure it in the code that when the user enter it, it should insert it here. You understand? So the next thing now is this line, the text, right? Then set, sorry, text, right? Here too, I'll leave it empty. Then this place, I told you this, I want, if you click on this comment, it should like tell me it is actually doing something. When you click on comment and it's not doing anything, I mean, I can continue clicking on this comment like several. I can even click on it like up to 10 times. If I click on it once and I'm not seeing anything it's actually doing, I'll continue clicking on it. So I will want, if I click on this, it should show something to tell me that it's actually processing what I am sending. You get? I would love it to be loading, right? So let's just name this variable here as what? Loading, right? And the function as what? Set loading. And here we don't need to leave it empty because it's actually a boolean something. You need to tell it true means it should load, false means it shouldn't load. So at the beginning, it should be what? False. I mean, it should not load, it should just be static like this. But when I click on it, it should start loading, right? I will set that later in the code. So now I've defined the variables. The next thing I need to do now is to think of what do I actually want here. I mean, I will want if a user enters anything in the name or the comment. Sorry, if a user didn't enter anything in the name or the comment and he or she is submitting, it should signify or it should alert the user that you cannot submit anything empty. So it doesn't submit an empty reply or just anyhow reply like that. You get? So now, what will I use to do that? I think I need an if statement to actually make that possible, right? Which I will say what if comment, which is going to be like the text, right? If text, this notation here means not. Like if I leave this text without notation, I mean text. If I put this with the text, I mean not text. So what I actually want to twist here now is that if there is no text, you get? And what if there's no text and the user just put some maybe spacing like this? I mean, spacing means something. You see that the placeholder that was there has actually clean. This write a comment, there was write a name here. If I put the space now, it has actually clean. So the user can actually comment and that space will have to be the comment, right? So I don't want that space to follow at the end. So I'll use this function called trim, so that it can actually trim all the spaces and check if there's actually a real text in the comment. If there's no real text, it won't proceed. You understand? Then if this is like this, let's tell it to return, sorry, let's tell it to return an alert. Sorry, an alert. Anything, you can just say unable to submit comment, or can't submit an empty comment, or you can't submit an empty, comment, something like that. Let me next this so you can see it, because I mean there are some aspect of my code you can see actually right now. Okay, okay, okay. Just leave it there because I mean, but let me bring it this side. I think you can see it a little. So that's where it ends. Then you close it. That's all. That's all for there. And the next thing you need to do now is what? Let's check on our code. I mean, after I finish writing anything I'm writing here, after I finish writing anything I'm writing here, I will want to like send it. And if I'm sending something, I will want to package everything in one as one object before sending using JSON. I will explain those ones when we get to that side. For now, I want to like package all the whole name, the comment, maybe the recipe ID and the user token. That means the user ID, and yeah, I'll need to like maybe package those four things: the name, the comment, the recipe ID, so that it will store it under that recipe, and maybe the comment ID, so it can store it under that comment. You get? Then the name or the token of the user, and the comment it says to save it under that particular user, so I can actually retrieve the comment of that user, or the system can retrieve the comment of that user with that user details at any time or anywhere you want it to showcase it. So what I will do now is, firstly, I need a variable to store all that, right? So the next thing I'll do now is I will use what we call payload. This, it doesn't mean you must use this name. You can use any other name, but this is the general name we developers use. So you can use it, or you can try to use your own name. Nothing. So I'm going to set this payload, the type. I mean, here I was saying string, token, I was being specific. But this one now, I'm going to use maybe different types. I'll just be like any. It should use any type. You get? So, and the next thing now is, okay, let's create the variable, and sorry, let's create the object. So inside the object, I mean, I told you we need to put four items, right? The token, the comment, the recipe ID, and the comment ID for it to save it, the reply to that comment. You get? So, but there are some that are going to be dynamic. I told you this form is for two things. Comment is going to be comment is going to be optional, because it can be it saving it. The comment ID is going to be optional. If it's creating a new comment, it doesn't need a comment ID, right? And the name is going to be optional, because I said anonymous user too can actually enter a comment. So if an anonymous user wants to enter a comment now, it's going to be difficult, because an anonymous user will not be able to like enter comment if I state the system to only like accept or to send a message with the user detail. So I'll have to make those two optional. If the token, if the user identity is actually existing in the system, it should not send. It won't send. You get? So, but now I have to tell the system that even if the user identity is not displaying, it should give it a default setting and send it. You understand? So now I will want to like put four items here, but I will put two that is not dynamic. Text, whatever it enters, it has to send it. There's nothing like, okay, well, if there is a user or there's a comment before, it has to send it. So I will put that there. Then the next thing that it will have to send by all means is the recipe ID. You get recipe ID. It will have to send it by all means. You can see it's showing a red line here. Now that means this particular code here does not recognize this recipe ID. Sorry, I think, okay, still here it is showing an error. That means it does not recognize this recipe ID actually here. But then if it's not recognizing the recipe ID, why is it not recognizing it? you see that I've actually defined this here for the system for this particular file to recognize it, but I've not tell this particular code because I'm actually coding this different. This is a different function. I'm not telling this function to recognize, so I have to pass it in here so that the function can actually recognize those properties. So firstly, let's pass in recipe ID. Sorry, and let's pass it as properties. So recipe ID, I've passed it as what? Properties, and you can see the error is gone. But it's not only recipe ID I want to use. I want to use token, I want to use comment ID. So let's pass the rest too. Comment ID and also pass token, right? Yep. So now this system can actually, okay, sorry, if I'm writing it this way, I'll need to put them inside a curly braces. Okay, and that's it there. So the next thing now is I will want to add the other items that are, that are optional, that which is the comment ID. If it's a new comment, it doesn't need a comment ID, right? It's optional. We'll have to add it to the object now, but defining it as an optional object needed. You get the name now. I'll have to the token. I'll have to define it. I'll have to put it inside this object, but I'll have to define it as an optional object needed too. So now let's just say if comment ID exists, right? If comment ID exists, the payload, that's if comment ID exists, you understand? It should append that comment ID. It should append what? The comment ID, and it should name everything comment ID and insert it here. This payload.comment ID. Now I said if comment ID exists, that if I'm sending a reply and there is already a comment ID, if I open this form and I'm sending an item and there is already a comment ID, it should write the comment ID inside this object that I've created and send it all of them together. You get? But if it does not exist, it should leave it and just send what is inside the object. You understand? That means it will create a new comment ID for it when it gets to the next part of the code when it does not exist. But if it exists, it does not need to create a new one again. So the API will do all those ones. So you don't need problem with those. And the next thing now is if we're talking about the name, the token, right? So we'll be like the token is like the authorization I told you. So if a user is registered, it has a token. If a user is not registered, he or she does not have a token. So now I will say if a user has a token or if a user does not, that it should check this and that I put here means it should check these two statements. If a user has a token, good. If it does not have, then let it check for the name. I'll put this dot trim again. So I've told you why we need dot trim so that there will not be space on it, right? So it should check these two things. If a user is registered, that's the meaning of this token. Then if he's not registered, he should check the name he entered. But this name I'm entering is also optional, right? So that's why I need to do it like this. So if these two things is available, if the token is there, then it will take the token and send it. If it's not there, then if the name is there, it should take the name that I entered. So I'll be like payload should append what? The name that I entered, and it should send everything to what? Name, and also trim it when it's sending it. Trim it and make sure it's not sending any empty space to anywhere. So that's it. Now I have actually packaged everything inside one object. Now I need to actually set the logic of how it's going to be sent, connected to the API and all. But if you are doing this part of code, make sure you use what we call try and catch. Why do we use try and catch? Try and catch now is telling you that please try to run this code, and if it fails, try to catch this one. If the logic that you write on that try fails, try to catch this. For this one now, I'll be like, try to run this code. If the logic fails, catch an error, send the error to the developer and showcase this alert to the user. So this particular try and catch now will help you that if this particular side of code fails, it doesn't make your whole page go blank. But if you didn't just try and catch and you just structure the logic anyhow like that, when that particular aspect of your code or the logic breaks, maybe due to maybe Wi-Fi, or maybe your Wi-Fi just went off and you're about to submit a form, your Wi-Fi went off. Then once I just click on submit, all my page just go blank because the ones that load before is trying to load from the beginning again. But using that try and catch, it only try that aspect of code. And if it fails, you just throw that error and all your page that has loaded before will still be there. You get? So that's the benefit of using try catch. So first of all, let's write the try aspect of the code. So now what do I want you to try? Firstly, I want you to connect to the API to fetch something from the API, right? That I've created. The API is just like I used to call it a messenger, but it's just like an address, something that help you an address where you take something to and bring something from. You get, it's the one that help you take items to the database, fetch items from the database, or you understand, you need to connect your code, make them interactive. You understand? So now I'll have to connect with the API so that when I actually click on send form after I've entered my name, my comment, and I click on comment, it can actually send it to a database for me, right? Okay. So now let's structure that here. In this try, first of all, what I said is we'll try to fetch. What am I fetching? I'm fetching an API, right? You use this what we call backtick. This two stuff right here now is what you use to actually fetch data. So now you write in the link, or you write in the path of where your either the link or the path of where your API is being written. If it's in another server, you have to bring the link. If it's not in another server, you have to like write in the path. I put my own in this code. There is another file here that I will create. Okay, this is actually not the code file. This is a different file, a new file, but it depends on. But in my original code file that I showed you earlier, I think there was a folder I wrote as API, and it's inside comment. You get? So, but we have to make this particular one also optional because we are creating it for two. What if it's there are two different APIs? That's what my own, but we grow every day. If I'm actually coding this system again, I won't be writing two APIs. I'll just write one API for comment and reply, but I actually write two different APIs for my comment and my reply. So now we have to make it optional here. Let's say what if comment ID exists. I told you use this as an optional notation, this question mark. So you said if it exists, then it should goes into API comment slash no, okay, now when I was structuring my own comment, I structured the comment inside an ID where the reply is. You get? So first what you do is I structure it like this with this ID. But now if you are calling on it, you have to call it on it as a variable, which is what comment ID. And for it to know, for the JavaScript or the TypeScript to know is a variable, you need to add this dollar sign. So you call it now comment ID. You get? So it should get to that particular ID of the comment. If the reply exists, it should get to this API, the comment, and get to that ID of the comment and get me and run this particular address. I told you it's like an address where your codes and everything is being stored. You understand? In the database or wherever it's stored or wherever the API is structured to store it. So this is how I structure my own API. You get, it's inside API comment and ID under reply. So you have to tell it to fetch this variable of ID and store it under the reply of that particular ID. Then you now tell it now that okay, if this if it's not like that, then it should move to the next one. You use this particular sign here to tell it to like if the comment ID does not exist. I said if comment ID exists, it should go there. What if it does not exist? Then it should just go to API comments. It depends on where you structure your API. This is where I structure my API. That's why I'm actually using that. So I'm done right here. So now, but now after it goes here, this one is just an address where your code is, right? Where you're going to be writing your codes and all. So after it get to this address, how does it send it? I have to define how it send it. You understand how it actually send those data I have entered. And there are three ways for me to define it. One is the method which I'm going to be using to send it, and there's what we call header too. Sorry, the method and the headers. Sorry, this would have imported a different thing. That's one thing about installing all this. It completes your code for you, but this actually means something else. So let me delete this from here. You get, okay, good. And then the body, because I'll be sending the body of the code, right? Okay. If you understand API, you know that, okay, if a method, there is what we call post, put, delete, get, and maybe search, all those. There's how we structure when we are the method of how we actually handle our API. If we are creating a data, we are creating a data somewhere, maybe in the database or anywhere you are creating a data, you use the method post to create the data. Like now, this particular one, I'm creating this new reply somewhere to be showcased. I'm creating it here. You get, so I'll use the method what post. You understand? Sorry, I'll need to open some curly braces for it. And yeah. So the headers now, in the headers, there are going to be two things. First of all, the content type, and I'll be checking my verification. The headers is like, okay, these headers and the body now means, okay, the header is like they are, if you are sending a mail, a letter now, there's going to be an address, a stamp maybe, and where it is going to, and all those things you get. So where the mailing is going to, and how do you want it to go inside an envelope, all those things. And the body is actually the content itself. That's the one I've actually packaged here. So I'm going to send inside this body. But here is, I mean, the stamp, the address, what type of letter are you sending, where are you sending it to, all those you get. So first of all, I'll need to define the content type. Sorry, content type. And this content type, I'll need to define it as, what will I define it as? Okay, I'll need to open a new curly brace for that one. Actually, let's define it as, okay, application dot slash JSON. What is JSON? This JSON, I'm actually telling this code that it's actually a digital data. It's actually a digital data. I want it to send it as a digital data. I'm sending a digital data. I'm not sending a picture. I'm not sending a link. I'm not sending a video. You understand? I'm sending a digital data like a text. You get, that's what I'm sending. So that's what I'm telling it now. Content type is a JSON file. That's what it is. It's called JavaScript object notation, but use it to send a text file. So like I said, we are going to open a curly brace for it, and yep, okay. So then you are sending a digital data. Where are you sending it to? First of all, before I tell it where to send it to, I need to actually structure the authorization as well. You get, like the stamp, like I said, the stamp shows, and okay, this is where it is coming from. Do you understand? And now for me to like unwrap, because I'm going to structure two things in the authorization. If it has a token, if it doesn't have a token. So for me to like unwrap those two things and for it to fetch one out of it at the end of the day, I'll need to be like one, two, three. I need to give it three dots like this. You can see the installation is always completing even when I don't need some things, you get. So first dot, second dot, and third dot, right? So like I said, is token. So it's optional. If token exists, it should give an authorization. Okay, you need to give this, sorry, a comma there. It should give an authorization, and it should give the authorization to what? Let's say the bearer. Okay, like I said, we use backticks this. Okay, use an authorization to the bearer. What authorization is it giving the bearer? It will fetch the token, that's the ID, from wherever it is stored. Like I told you, if you are bringing in a variable, we have to use the dollar sign. So you are telling it should fetch this token as an authorization. What if your token is not there? What should it do? It should just return an empty object. You understand? So if it's not there, this has to be in the same line. So sorry, I'll take it to the same line. And I have not closed this particular one that I did there, so I can bring this to the next line now, since I have to close this, right? Good. So that's it. And I'll have to close this too. Right, good. What about this? I'll have to close that. Good. So, and yep, that's all you need there. So what about the body? Like I said, in the body here, I think we don't need all this, do we? That's it. In the body here, we'll be sending a JSON file, like I said. So, but we'll have to stringify it, because everything we have gathered, some is an integer, some is a boolean, some is this. So we have to send it as a text file. So now we have to stringify it into a text file, so it can just send it as one item. Why do we actually need this JSON? Like, imagine I'm writing a Python backend and I want it to connect with a front end, a JavaScript front end. Do you get? There are two different languages. I mean, I understand Swahili, you understand French. So for us to communicate now, there must be an intermediary language that we both will use to like communicate. You get, which is mostly all around is English, right? Some people understand English. We can easily use to communicate between the two of us. So right now, JSON is like the intermediary language which all the like Python and Java can use to like communicate now. You understand? So first of all, I will stringify it and pass in the item I've actually created above there, which is the payload, right? So now I've actually tell it is going to be like, sending this payload I've actually packaged inside this space here. So the next thing now I will be doing now is, okay, after all this, there's what I didn't, here I'm supposed to set this loading to load, because after I have entered 1, 2, 3, all these things, this loading now, I will want it to actually start loading on click, because I actually structure a code here that if text.trim, like, if that means I must have clicked it before this statement will be working, right? If you click it and there is no text there, it should just say you can't submit an empty comment. It should trigger an alert instead of, you know, sending an empty space to the database or anywhere it's sending it to. You get? So here right now, what I'll do is I'll call the function. You see the reason why the function is good, because at anywhere now I can actually call the loading function. And what will I set it to? I'll set it to true here, because yeah, it was false at default. Now I'm setting it to true, so the function can start loading. What is actually the loading function? I want to actually tell it, if I call this function, what does it does. I'll say it later on the what on the return at the return section. when I'm coding the return section, I'll say what everything is actually going to be displaying. What are you going to be seeing here? I'll set everything there, but here is actually the logic. Yeah. So the next thing now is right here. Now I will need, after all this has been done, okay, here is, it should set loading, and if it is empty, it should throw this alert. What if I entered something actually and I click it? Do I want it to be loading forever? No, I want that loading to go back to default, right? So what I will do is to set that loading back to the default state before I write the catch code. I mean, here actually, okay, I want to set the loading back to a default state. Sorry, back to false, right? Or you know what? Let's let's not set the loading back to false or back to anything. Let's leave the loading as it is. I think later we'll do that. But first of all, this comment that is here, we'll need to set it to false. Let's do it inside here. Set the function is what? Set text, right? Set text now to empty, and you should also set the name, which is it, what do we call it there? What do we define it as? Set name. But before it set that name to empty, what if the user didn't enter a name? What if he is a registered user? He cannot, like, this code cannot be setting a registered user name to a default setting or anything. So let me use if here. Let's say if the user is registered, like if it has a token. Sorry, if it does not have a token. If it does not have a token, then let it set that name field, because if it has a token, this particular name field will not pop up. That's if the user is registered. But if he or she is not registered, then once it has performed what it needs to do, it should set it back to this place. Okay. So before I said it should set token to false, I don't need to say that you set the loading to false right here, because I mean um it has not run. Okay, it should stop loading actually before. That's, it should set loading back to false after all this has been done. Maybe if it is sent, it would have sent, but after it has tried to run this particular, maybe if you click it, this is where it's actually sending it to an address, and after it's done sending it to an address, then the loading should come back to what? To false. So the next thing I'll be doing now is the catch. I told you to try to do this. What if you try to do this and maybe a network downtime or something, maybe your Wi-Fi is down or there's a logic error or anything that happens? What is it supposed to do? It should try and do this rather than just not doing anything. It should try and catch this particular error. What is the error I want it to catch? First of all, it should console the error to the developer, so I can actually know what error. It should console.error, what error, the error it actually created. It should send it to the developer and then alert the user. It should alert the user and said, but here I'll have to make it optional too, because I should tell it if the comment ID exists, if it exists, it should tell the user failed to submit reply, right? Then if it does not exist, it should tell the user failed failed to submit comment, right? So yeah, that's it. So I have actually finished writing the logic. Now let's come to this interface. how everything is being structured here in the interface. I told you it's going to be on the return. Now we are returning what you, the user, is going to be viewing, what you're actually going to be seeing at your own end. So what we are going to be doing here is let's cancel the placeholder we actually inserted there. And now let's give a container. If you have actually learned HTML before, you know what a container is. Let's give a container. I mean, you can style the container here, but you know, when we are styling with Tailwind, because I actually installed Tailwind in this, what I use in my Next.js is what actually to style is what Tailwind. So use class name to style anything here. You can just write border or anything, whatever you want to style, just write in it there. But for now, I'll leave that. And okay, that's the container there. And the next thing we'll need to be doing now, we have to set a logic for this so that this particular field opens if the user does not have a token, and it does not open if it has a token. So we have to actually set that in a logic and said if the user does not have a token, but if a user does not have a token, it should do this. Sorry. Sorry about that. So if a user does not have a token, then it should give me, if you check first, if a user does not have a token, then it should do this. What do I want it to do? I want it to actually, okay, bring in an input, right? Then if a user have a token, it should bring in, if a user does not have a token, it should give me that input of what? Text, right? Type text. And let's structure it. Let's give it a placeholder, something that will be holding it. Like you see this, your name optional, like is there. Your name, okay, sorry, optional. Yep. So aside the placeholder, what else do we need there? I mean, we'll need this function called onChange, right? The onChange function, so that that's the function we actually use to like make it recognize the event. When you enter something here, right? What do we make? What makes the system to like know that you're actually entering something? What makes it to like actually pick what you are entering there? There's this function. I told you this is like a JSX file, is like a JavaScript and HTML file. So we are writing JavaScript and HTML all together. You get, so there's this function we call, first of all, let's get the value here. The value will be what? The name that was entered, the one we defined up there. Now you see we are using those variables that we defined, or the logic and everything we did up there. So now the name that we define up there, and the onChange function, what should it do? It should actually, let's give it a function. Let's write a function here. Let's tell it, it should actually use the set text function, or set name, sorry, rather, that's set name, right? This is actually name. Set name function. And what should it do in the function? The event, this E means event. When you actually start writing something here, the system has actually created an object where it tells what you are actually doing, that makes the system to recognize what you are doing, and that object is called event. So this E now make it to create an object where it starts recognizing what you are doing, where the system starts recognizing what you are actually doing when you are entering something. You get, so here now you now be like the event should target what? The value that is being entered right there. So you see the use of that set name function we are creating that time, just like the regular creating of um so you can actually bring in a class name too, a class name where you know, a class name, you get. Oh, sorry. I'll bring this Mr. Man's stuff right here. Okay. And I think that's all. The class name is just for, the styling and all. Then the next thing right there, let's close this particular input braces here. So the next thing is the text, right? Let's use this, we'll call it text area. But right here, we don't need to enter a particular text. So what we'll just do is that, oh, sorry, I'll be needing to delete this from here. We are entering it inside the, inside all this. This is to close this, and this is to close this. So we are done with this section. We are moving to the next section. So let's paste it outside. So now this text area, let's actually define the item it needs to. It needs a placeholder too, right? But this placeholder, I want it to be a function, not that, because I want it to check if comment ID exists. I'm always checking for comment ID right here. So if comment ID exists, it should tell me write a reply instead of write a comment. Then if it does not exist, then that means you are creating a new comment. So you should write a comment instead. You get. So then the next thing is the value stuff. It should get me a value. What is it getting now? It's getting the text, right? See, I'm using all the variables I created there. Then use the unchained function, so it listens to what you're actually entering in there. Like I told you, a function. So a function is structured this way. Total the system is actually a function. So you use the set text function, and you pass in the value. You should target the particular value that you are entering right there. So then the class name for the styling and all, you get me. So that's it for this particular part. Then the next one is the button right here. Then let's bring in the button, and the button needs structuring up here too. Then let's say the button on click, if you click the button, let it return a particular function. The function, what do we title the function as? Okay, that's true. We actually didn't put everything inside a function. We put it inside a reply form. Rather, all this, when we were working on the button, when you click on the button, everything, we are supposed to put it inside a function so we can actually render the function inside the button. So when you click the button, all this function right here start working. So let's render this inside a function rather. Const what's going to be the function name? Let's say submit. Let's name it submit form. Okay, let's name the function that will be equal to um and where does the function end? Control X. Where does the function end? Let's close the curly braces there. Good. It's now inside a function, but this particular function is, we use what we call, okay, wait, there are a lot of things I did here, right? Right here, you were fetching a data. So what if it start running other code without waiting for this to get done? So we have to use what we call await here, so that it actually waits for this particular try and catch or fetching before it run all this try and catch code that is here, blah blah blah. What if it didn't fetch the data it needs from the API and it start running the remaining code? So let's us tell it to like await and fetch the reply, the address it needs from the API before running this particular code here. But before the awake will work, we need to put what we call async right here. You get. So yeah, you can see error was there the other time, but now the error It's gone. So this submit form now is what we'll now pass in here. You can see it here now. Submit form. The next thing now is disabled. Here is where we will now bring in the loading function. Sorry, disabled. We'll bring in the loading function, the one we created up there the other time. Understand? So then the next thing, maybe the class name. So for styling and all. Yep, that's all you need right there. Okay, now let's structure the button inside here. We'll structure it as a function because the loading, if the loading is set to true, that if that function has been set, what should happen? What's going off? I'm putting this here and I'm telling you that if it is loading, okay, if it is loading, let it write, if the function loading is being triggered, let it write submitting. And if comment ID exists, let it also write reply instead of comment in the button there. You get, then if it does not exist, let it now write comment in that button. Again, if it's loading, let it change to submitting. And if comment ID exists, it should write to reply instead of this comment. And if it doesn't exist, comment. So you structure the button here, the styling, how it become greens and all. And guess what? That's the end of our code. That's the end of this long journey. We've been coming for about an hour now. I mean, it's not easy, but we are here. Oh, let's confirm if you actually wrote the right code, right? Okay, sorry. Um, I know you want to actually confirm so bad. Did he wrote nonsense? All right, now let's confirm. Oh, I think when I was trying to write method the other time, I mistakenly import this. So let's take it out. You can see how I structured my code, all and all. Yep, because this is actually the file that is running, this is actually the file that is running that particular code up there, and you see blah blah blah, how everything came on, and just that's how we get what we have here. That's how we got this particular component. It's easy, but now that I walk you through the stress to create this, I mean, you as a user, you just enter your name here, you enter your comment here, you be like comment, ping, everything commented and showed there. Actually, this is how we go through stress before we create just this. Now imagine how we code the whole application. So appreciate us, please. See you all later.